Hi everyone, welcome to this video. What we're going to do today is work through how I would paint some of these foot knights from Wargames Atlantic. They're part of the Age of Chivalry range and I'll be painting them up to fit in with my Barons Wall collection. And I've picked out 5 of the models, so this is 5 out of the 24 you get in the box. And really it's just a selection of the ones that I like the poses of. So we'll go through how I paint them, what colours I use, and I want to try and keep this relatively quick. So with that in mind, I've started off with a bit of a more unorthodox base colour. I've started off with Desert Sand from Colourforge. But the reason I've gone for this colour, and let me zoom in a little bit more for you. The reason I've gone for this colour is because if I want to paint the knights tabards, so they're the cloth on here, a light colour, I find it easier to start from a beige or a white and then build up. If I want to paint them black, if I want to paint any of the bits brown, it's easier to paint over. I can paint over a light undercoat easier than I can paint from a dark undercoat up to light. So we'll start first off with this. The first step I want to do is give them a quick dry brush, possibly with a couple of different tones of white or beige, just to sort of like pick out those areas of the cloth which will be lighter, and we'll take it from there. So I'll run through step by step. I'll do a step, show you, do a step, show you sort of thing, and we'll see how I get on. So let's get cracking. So I've given these guys a dry brush. First off, I went for some Iraqi sand, which I'll pop a picture and you can see does make a bit of a difference, but it didn't quite make the sort of difference I wanted it to. So I went in again and gave them a dry brush of off-white, but it gives them quite a nice sort of like base coat, and this is completely different to how I've painted any of my knights so far, so it's a bit of an experiment on my part. But what we're now left with on all of these guys is a near perfect base for any colour we would want to put onto the cloth areas. For these guys, I think what I'll probably go with is very sort of like normal colours. I've got some reds I can use, so for anything red I'll use Vallejo red. Anything yellowy sort of tone, very similar to what I did with the sergeants, we'll use bronze flesh tone there. I've got some greys and greens here we can use for green. I have got a nice dark ocean blue. I've also got a imperial blue, so I'll do a variety of different colours. I like to try and keep my knights relatively simple. In the time period we're looking at, heraldry hadn't quite reached the peak that it would do eventually, would do at later dates. So things are quite simple really, either one colour, quartered, checkered, stripes, chevrons, that sort of thing. But I'll do a variety. We also now need to block in some of the other colours. So what I'll do is block in some of the browns, for example, like the straps. They've got any of the weapon shafts and the shaft of the mace there as well. We'll also need to block in the metallic colours. I normally do that with a mix, sort of a roughly 50-50 mix of black and oily steel. So it gives you quite a dark colour. And then I just later on we'll go over that and give it a bit of a highlight with silver. On these guys, there's not a lot else really to do. Some detailing around the helmets perhaps. Bits and pieces here and there, sword scabbards. But I'll block the colours in, and then once they're blocked in, I'll come back and I'll talk to you a bit more about what each colour is and the next step we take after that. So now we've blocked in the base colours, and you can see really it is just quite a simple job of making sure everything's got a coat. So I don't tend to do some of the sort of metallic details until later. You don't have to worry really about the being as neat as you need to be. So this guy's got sort of a striped surcoat. I've gone for this one here who's got a yellow surcoat. I've done the metals as well. So that's a little bit of Vallejo gunmetal mixed with a bit of black, just to darken it down a little bit. We've got a half and half surcoat, half green, half beige, which we will bring up to a white coat after the next step. But this is all quite simple really, and it doesn't take a lot to get the base colours down. We've gone for a quartered red and white surcoat here, and I will show you separately the shields in a second that I've started working on. But it's very, very basic, blocking the colours. This one we're going to do is a Hospital Knight, so he's got a black surcoat at the moment. We've gone for a black scabbard as well on him, and I've just blocked in the colours for the straps on all of them as well. Just very basic, because the next step is to give them all a wash of this stuff. I'm painted strong tone. I will thin it down quite considerably, certainly for the areas where we've got the white. For this guy, I may mix in a little bit of red, so a little bit of a red tone, which is this one. That's just to sort of like try and keep shading of the yellow. This red tone works quite well on shading yellow. I've started the shields. You can see here, these are the plastic Wargames Atlantic shields. I've just, one side of them is spray painted brown, and then the other side was spray painted with Games Workshop's Wraithbone. I've started on the shield, which is going to go obviously for this guy, gets the quartered shield. This guy is going to get the Hospital shield, and that's just a rough sketch of the cross on there. I do still need to do 3 other shields, but I'll do those as well as I go through. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and wash these, and then I'll bring you back once the wash is dried, and we'll start putting on some more detailed layers. So here's the batch of knights after their first wash, and as you can see, I said it would be quite a rough wash, but it does shade the recesses and give a good starting point for us to start then adding some highlights and some details. You could, if you wanted, always stop at this point, base them and call them done, but I like to add a little bit more detail. So what I'll be doing is I'll be going over some of the areas, not so much on this guy with the black, because I don't want to turn the black to grey by accident, and highlighting them. So for example, on this guy, I'll be picking out some of the details of the padded gambeson underneath. I'll be picking out and highlighting the straps. I'll be highlighting the yellow of his surcoat there. I'll be highlighting the scabbard, adding some gold detailing on the scabbard, probably gold or bronze. Highlight the mace. I will give a sort of like a bit of a highlight on the helmet and things like that to make it sort of like stand out a bit more, so you can see the eye slits better. Certainly on ones like this, I'll highlight that front strip and highlight some of the flat areas a bit more. Same with the blade here. And this guy obviously will paint the face, and then I'll sort of like highlight and add some more detail to his surcoat. So that's it really for that step. Like I said, it's very quick and dirty. You could stop there and call the miniatures done. I'll be using the same colours again to add a base highlight, and then I'll be adding a little bit of a lighter colour. So for the red, I've got a lighter red that I use to add in. For the green, I've got like a brown, like a light brown beigey sort of colour that I'll add in to start giving the highlights. For the white, I'll go over that with an off-white and then highlight it with a bit of a brilliant white, a pure white. And for the black, it can be a bit difficult because I want to try and avoid making this grey, so I'll probably add a bit of brown into the black to give us our highlights. But going well so far. So I'll go away and do some of the highlights and come back and show you when I'm halfway through, so you can see the difference that it's making. So here we go. After a couple of weeks of on and off painting, I've managed to finish up this first batch of foot knights. And yes, immediately you can tell there's a massive difference between this step and the last step. But really there's not that much to it. So what I start off by doing really is going back across all the models and highlighting different bits and pieces. And I normally if I'm batch painting as I am in the minute, I'll paint sort of like the same colour across different models. So I went and highlighted all of the straps together at once. Any of the wood areas that needed to be done, highlighted all of those. Any beige that you can see, so for example you've got the padded gambeson underneath, they all got highlighted, and I tend to do that by using the original colour followed by adding a little bit of a lighter tone into it. So if we take this yellow here for example, that started off as Vallejo game colour bronze flesh tone. I added in a little bit of model colour flat yellow, and then finally that end highlight added in a bit of off-white. And you can see when you look closely at the model, you can see that I'm leaving the wash and the darker tones in the recesses and just picking out the highlights. And I'll repeat this for lots of different colours. So for example, the red here, I started off with the original colour, which I believe would have been, I think it's just Vallejo red. Let me find it. Yeah, I would have started with Vallejo red, and then I have got a flat red, which is much brighter, and then the final highlight would have been adding a little bit of off-white, because with red you have to be careful that you don't turn it pink. So again, you can see there, just really picking out the highlights on the cloth. The white areas just got highlighted with off-white, and then if needed cold white. For the Hospital Knight here, so he started off obviously with all of his cloth in black. I went over that with a highlight. I added a little bit, tiny little bit, and it's almost so subtle you can't see it, of blue. So that would have been the Imperial Blue from the game colour range. And then I added some white to that. I have to be, again, careful with highlighting black because it can turn grey. But I think this is kind of just about enough to keep it so that it's obviously meant to be black. So I highlighted all the cloth for all of these guys. Went round and highlighted, painted obviously, and highlighted the scabbards, depending on what colour their cloth was. Touched up some details on the helmets. So for example, this guy here, he's got a bit of gold detail on his great helm there. Painted the face for this one. For all the others so far, the sergeants and the levy, I've not bothered painting the eyes, but for this guy, because he's got his helmet off and he's going to be a commander sort of figure, I did paint the eyes for this. Highlighted this one in a similar sort of way, only instead of going, I normally tend to go vertically with highlighting cloth. I went across for this, given that he's wearing stripes. But yeah, it's a relatively simple process, and it's the same process I follow each time for every model. The final step, which I've just finished, was doing the shields. I am going to do a separate video on how I paint my shields, mainly because I use a very similar process every single time. I start off with them spray painted with, this is Games Workshop Wraithbone, and then build up from there. So even the black shield, all of the shields started off the same colour, and I just built up from there. So here we go, all finished and ready for the tabletop. So since the last video, what I've done with these guys is I've finished off the shields and glued them on. I've finished off the basing, and I've also added a bit of weathering to them. So as you can see on the shields, they've got scratches and they've got some sort of like brown splodges for the mud on the bottom here. Each of them, it's quite easy to do on the knights. It's a little bit more tricky on some of the other ones, mainly because of the colours I've used. But if I turn this guy around, you'll be able to see, certainly, turn each of them around. I've used German camo brown from Vallejo model colour, and it's a very dark, almost black brown, and it works really well for sort of like muddy splotches. And if I turn this guy, you can see on the shield as well. Essentially what I do is I get my dry brush and I don't dry off the brush as much as if I was going to do a dry brush. Instead I just sort of like splodge the paint carefully around the bottoms, certainly avoiding not to go too high up the side of the Serco, otherwise then you start to lose the colour of it really. And what I do for some of them is I then come back with a lighter shade of Iraqi sand, which is the colour I use to dry brush my bases, mainly just to sort of like give almost like two different shades. For this guy at the end here, this Hospital Knight, because of course he's going to be sort of like stationed in the desert, I don't use the dark camo brown, I use just Iraqi sand on its own, and again just give it a small dusting at the bottom of the surcoat and then also on the shield, just a little bit of a couple of splotches here and there. And I think they've come out really nicely. I really like how the hospitals come out, so I'll probably end up doing a few more of those in that way. I definitely like the banner bearer. I'm going to be making a banner for him using the foil from a tomato puree tube. So the UK, our tomato puree comes in sort of like tubes, a bit like toothpaste. And if you cut it, clean it and roll it flat, it forms almost the perfect material to use for banners. So keep an eye out. I want to do a video on that. So hopefully if I get a chance, I'll film something for you to see. I like how the yellows come out on this guy. I think the colours worked really well, the yellow and the red, and the shields. I've got my shield method down to a fine art now, how I like to do it. So I think they've come out quite well. So thanks for watching. If you've got any of the other Wargames Atlantic plastic sets, please check out my other videos I've done. I've also done a video for the Levy and the Sergeants. So I'll post some pictures of these as well at the end, so if you want to get some close-ups, you'll be able to see how they look. Thanks for watching. I hope you like it. Please subscribe to the channel and keep an eye out for some more videos. Cheers.